On August 19, 2024, a group of young individuals carried out one of the largest heists in the history of cryptocurrency, specifically targeting Bitcoin. The culprits, Malone Lam, Veer Tatel, Jan Deal, Serrano Danish Khan, and Chen, were all between the ages of 18 and 20. Their target, an early investor in Bitcoin who had no idea that his seemingly normal day was about to turn into his worst nightmare. He had no inkling that he was on the verge of losing Bitcoin worth a staggering $230 million. But how did this gang manage to deceive one of the most experienced investors in the field? Were they elite hackers with extraordinary programming skills? The reality was far simpler than that. Rather than deploying advanced hacking techniques, the group relied on a much more straightforward yet highly effective approach, exploiting human nature. Instead of attempting to breach their victims' electronic accounts through conventional hacking, they decided to manipulate his psychological vulnerabilities, preying on his fears and instincts. On August 19, 2024, around 6 p.m., the unsuspecting victim returned home after a routine day at work. He had dinner, browsed some articles online, and contemplated selecting a movie for the evening. Then, out of nowhere, his phone rang. The call seemed ordinary, nothing suspicious at all. "Hello?" he answered. "Good evening, sir. Am I speaking with—" The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "This is Google support." Of course, this call was not from Google. The person on the line was none other than Veer Tatel, also known as Wiz, an 18-year-old member of the gang. He managed to convince the victim that his Google accounts had been compromised and that urgent action was required to prevent the hacker from accessing sensitive files, potentially including banking information. This sense of urgency and the pressing need for immediate action clouded the victim's judgment. Without giving it much thought, he cooperated and handed over his Gmail and iCloud credentials. At this stage, the gang had already obtained critical security information. A few hours later, the second call came in. This time, it was from Jan Deal Serrano, known within the group as Bax, a 21-year-old mastermind. He pretended to be a representative from Gemini, the cryptocurrency exchange platform that the victim regularly used. Utilizing the same social engineering tactics, he informed the victim of suspicious activity in his crypto wallet, warning that one of his accounts may have been compromised. With urgency in his voice, Serrano persuaded the victim to reset his two-factor authentication to FA. What the victim didn't realize was that by doing so, he was unknowingly giving the gang full control over his Gemini account. Within minutes, the funds were being transferred to a hijacked wallet under the criminal's control. Despite the escalating situation, the victim still believed he was taking necessary precautions to secure his assets. But the gang had one final trick up their sleeve. They instructed the victim to install AnyDesk, a remote access software often used for technical support. The gang framed it as an additional security measure to safeguard his accounts. However, in reality, this was the final blow. Without suspecting a thing, the victim granted the hackers full access to his computer. With his screen visible to them, all they had to do was wait and watch. As he navigated through his files and security settings, the victim unknowingly revealed his Bitcoin wallet password. In just a few clicks, a vast fortune was siphoned from his account and into the hands of the gang. The criminals recorded their reactions upon successfully executing the heist, capturing their excitement and celebrations. A total of 4,064 Bitcoins, worth approximately $230 million at the time, were now in their possession. By the time of this story's documentation, the value had surged beyond $365 million following the U.S. elections. But one might wonder, how could someone so wealthy and experienced fall victim to such a simple scam? And why did the gang document their crime, leaving behind clear evidence against themselves? The case is still unfolding, with new details emerging. However, the only undeniable fact at this stage is that the funds were now securely in the hands of the criminals. 17 minutes after acquiring the funds, the gang initiated the money laundering process. They were well aware that the heist was only half the battle. The key now was ensuring the stolen Bitcoin became untraceable. The plan involved breaking the Bitcoin into smaller transactions and distributing them across 15 different exchanges. This technique, known as peel chains, is a common laundering tactic where large transactions are fragmented into smaller ones, making tracking exponentially more difficult. They converted the stolen Bitcoin into Litecoin, then Litecoin into Ethereum, and Ethereum into Monero. This cycle continued for several days, making it nearly impossible for authorities to trace the money's origin. The victim's wealth was effectively scattered, exchanged, and laundered multiple times until it was as good as clean. Now that the money was seemingly safe, the young criminals wasted no time indulging in their newfound fortunes. In the days leading up to the heist, they had exchanged messages on Telegram, sharing images and links to luxury items, dream purchases from brands like Louis Vuitton and Givenchy. Each member of the gang took their share and maintained a careful approach to spending, ensuring their newfound wealth didn't attract unwanted attention. All except for one, Malone Lamb. Malone, residing in Los Angeles, could not resist the allure of luxury. The moment he had access to his cut, he dove headfirst into a life of extravagance. Everything he had ever dreamed of owning or experiencing was now within reach. High-end nightclubs became his second home. He was a VIP guest everywhere he went. The amounts he spent were nothing short of astonishing. His bar tabs alone ranged between $265,000 and $300,000 per night. On one occasion, he spent over $500,000 in a single evening. Everywhere he went, his presence was known. His name flashed across the nightclub screens, DJs shouted him out, and other partygoers revered him. At one event, he was so impressed with the DJ that he gifted him a $25,000 bottle of champagne. On another occasion, he handed a DJ a $2,000 tip and ordered every available drink on the menu, all on the DJ's tab. Despite all the entertainment Los Angeles had to offer, Malone's hunger for excess remained insatiable. He craved more attention, more luxury, more extravagance. So he chartered a private jet and headed to Miami, where his lavish lifestyle reached new heights. He rented a waterfront mansion valued at $10 million. If he was renting, the monthly cost alone would have been around $62,000. The mansion was nothing short of opulent, an 800-square-meter estate with 7.5-meter-high ceilings, multiple suites, a massive swimming pool, and a jacuzzi. The front yard had 2 grand gates, leading to an extended driveway and a spacious garage, which quickly filled with high-end sports cars and luxury vehicles. Let me take you on a journey into the extravagant world of Malone, a young millionaire who indulged in the finest luxuries life had to offer. His car collection alone was the stuff of dreams, a fleet of vehicles that showcased his taste for exclusivity and excess. Among them was a black Ferrari SF90 customized by Mansory, an elegant white Lamborghini Urus, and another Urus, this one also modified by Mansory but featuring a striking light blue interior. Malone's love for Lamborghinis didn't stop there. He also owned a black Lamborghini Revuelto, a sleek and powerful machine, and another one in a matte gray finish. Alongside these, he had a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, the latest model, built for both performance and prestige. His taste in SUVs extended beyond Lamborghini. He also acquired a rare black Ferrari SUV. When it came to his Mercedes-Benz G-Class, he found himself torn between 2 options. One in a sophisticated gray and another in a striking camouflage pattern of matte black and gray. In a moment of pure indulgence, he decided not to choose but to take both. Rolls-Royce was also on his list, as he owned a convertible in a bold black and pink combination, exuding both power and flamboyance. For high-performance sports cars, he had a stunning blue BMW M4, a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ in pristine white with his name, Rari Superfast 82, emblazoned on it in bold lettering. He also acquired another Aventador, this time in a breathtaking shade of blue. His appetite for Urus models remained insatiable. He owned yet another, this time in an eye-catching shade of pink. This particular Urus was meant as a gift for his ex-girlfriend, a grand gesture in hopes of rekindling their romance. Unfortunately for Malone, she politely declined and suggested they remain just friends. His collection extended beyond Lamborghinis. Malone was the proud owner of a McLaren 765 LT, built entirely from carbon fiber for the ultimate lightweight performance. He also had a Pagani Huayra in a mesmerizing shade of blue. But even with this seemingly endless list of supercars, his spending habits didn't end there. Malone was equally obsessed with high fashion and designer brands. His wardrobe was nothing short of spectacular, filled with luxury pieces from the world's most exclusive designers. He had no hesitation in spending $15,000 or more on a single clothing item. His love for luxury fashion knew no bounds, but as time went on, even he began to recognize the fleeting nature of such indulgences. After years of excessive spending on nightlife, cars, and fashion, Malone made a surprising decision. He resolved to invest some of his wealth into items that would retain their value over time. He turned his attention to exquisite jewelry, diamond-encrusted bracelets, an ultra-rare diamond-studded Richard Mille watch, and even diamond rings for every finger. Of course, one watch wasn't enough, so he went ahead and acquired 3 or 4 more, each in a different color. Even his sunglasses were covered in diamonds, making sure that every detail of his appearance screamed wealth. But Malone was not just another reckless teenager blinded by his wealth. He had a generous side as well. More than once, he used his newfound riches to help others. One of his grand gestures involved purchasing 5 Birkin bags and randomly gifting them to women at an upscale nightclub. One of the recipients was Olivia Allen, a well-known fashion model. Another was Sky Bree, a famous TikToker, who later posted a video claiming that she wasn't particularly fond of the bag, a statement that caused quite a stir. Malone was ecstatic about his growing fame. Everywhere he went, he became the center of attention. However, his extravagant lifestyle and reckless spending began to attract a different kind of attention, one that he hadn't anticipated. Law enforcement agencies and blockchain experts started taking a closer look at Malone's financial movements. Investigators carefully monitored his lavish expenditures in nightclubs, on cars, and more. At the same time, they began tracing the digital pathways through which the stolen money had flowed from the victim's account to Malone. Initially, there was no direct evidence linking him to any crime. However, the more he spent, the clearer it became that his newfound fortune was tied to a major theft. Suspicion grew, and before long, Malone's fairy tale life was teetering on the edge of collapse. At this stage, Malone's mindset was like that of any overconfident criminal. He believed he was untouchable. He thought, "I'm smarter than everyone. No one can catch me, and even if they do, I'll just hire the best lawyers in the country." But behind the scenes, law enforcement officials and cryptocurrency experts were already connecting the dots. Investigators tracked the major financial movements linked to the stolen Bitcoin and used blockchain analysis to determine its exact path. As always, the breakthrough in the case came from small mistakes made by the criminals. One of the biggest errors came during the money laundering process. For example, one of Malone's associates, known as Wiz, accidentally linked stolen funds to his real-life identity while attempting to transfer them. Another associate, Bax, made the fatal error of transferring a tiny portion of the stolen money into an account tied to his legitimate financial profile. These seemingly minor mistakes, along with chat logs, voice recordings, and digital fingerprints, helped authorities build an airtight case. By September 2024, the FBI and other law enforcement agencies had gathered enough evidence to act. On September 19th, a team of FBI agents raided Malone's mansion in Miami. He was arrested and taken away from the very fleet of luxury cars he had bought with his stolen fortune. The scene was a striking contrast. One moment he was living like royalty, and the next, he was in handcuffs. For the victim of the crime, this was a satisfying moment. But the question remained, would he ever recover his stolen money? Unfortunately, the outlook was bleak. Out of the $230 million that had been stolen, authorities managed to freeze only $10 million. The cash recovered from Malone and his associates amounted to just $500,000. The majority of the stolen funds still remained in digital wallets. One of these wallets, controlled by Bax, held around $21 million. Another, linked to Wiz, contained approximately $39 million. Malone himself had about $4 million sitting in a digital wallet. But what about the luxury items Malone had purchased? The cars, the nightclub bills, the private jet rentals. When criminals buy luxury goods with stolen money, the government seizes those assets upon their arrest. This process, known as asset forfeiture, applies to cars, mansions, jewelry, and any other extravagant purchases. Once seized, these assets are auctioned off, often back to the same dealerships that sold them to the criminals in the first place, usually at significantly lower prices. The proceeds from these auctions are split into various categories. Some funds are used to compensate victims, while the rest go toward covering investigative and legal costs, If the victim is lucky, they might recover around 50 to 65% of the auctioned value, with the remainder covering administrative expenses. Following Malone's arrest, 3 of his luxury cars were spotted on the streets of Los Angeles, badly damaged. His Lamborghini had sustained major front-end damage, while his Porsche had severe damage to the rear. It appeared that the Lamborghini had crashed into the Porsche. These damages would significantly decrease the value of the vehicles at auction, further reducing the amount that could be recovered. Aside from his Richard Mille watches, which retained their value due to their exclusivity, most of Malone's luxury purchases depreciated significantly. The money he had spent in nightclubs, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single night, was gone forever. Malone had lived like a king for several months, but now he faced the possibility of spending the next 20 years behind bars. His reckless financial spree had led to an inevitable downfall, one marked by arrests, asset seizures, and his name forever tied to one of the biggest cryptocurrency heists in history. And Olivia Allen? The model who had received a Birkin bag from Malone. After his arrest, she posted a TikTok video wearing a police uniform, proudly holding the same Birkin bag he had gifted her.